The views presented in this program are not meant to express the specific views of Aletheia Bible Fellowship. You are listening to the Vigilance Radio Network.
Welcome to Nite Lite Radio. The Nite Lite is Aletheia Bible Fellowship's late-night biblical counseling program. For the next hour, you can call in, text, or message. Email us at counseling@abfpdx.org. You can video chat us over Facebook Messenger. Our phone number is 971-208-5290. Our chat profiles are in the link, and we're here to have relevant and biblical problem-solving conversations about the difficult issues that nobody prefers to talk about. So, if you or someone you know needs help, talk to us. The camera will be on for the next hour. I am Pastor Josh with ABF's Chaplains in Training,
Jacob Browning,
and
Justine.
And hiding in the control booth is also producer Jasmine. So let's go ahead and do this. Again, phone number 971-208-5290, or you can email us or even call one of our chat profiles. Tonight, we are going to be talking about something that is a pretty big deal. Not that any of these topics haven't been in the past. If I can pull up my notes here. But we're going to be talking about the subject of tech addiction. Or some might call it screen addiction. And it's a topic that kind of refers to a lot of things. It refers to everything from your phone, which I think is where the majority of people are going to connect to it on, or maybe don't realize that it's affecting them, to the things that you do on your phone. So it can be gaming. I guess it's not just limited to your phone, but it's, your phone or a computer screen, a tablet, TV. So it can be gaming, it can be binge watching movies, it can be, what are some other things, guys?
Drawing a blank, but I'm sure there's many other things. Snapchat.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. So, it can be a ton of things. I'm sure you guys know what we're talking about. A lot of people have this problem to the point where it is becoming something that in the secular world they're talking about as an actual health crisis. And we should be talking about it as Christians too. So let's go ahead and define the problem. So you want to start off on that?
Yeah. So technology addiction has been defined as frequent and obsessive technology-related behavior, increasingly practiced despite negative consequences to the user of the technology. That's a Hazelden Betty Ford definition. Basically, it can become a source of dependence, and in our modern world, if you are left without your phone, you can either feel annoyed or even isolated or extremely anxious and depressed. And those are some of the signs that can, sort of show a red flag of being addicted to technology.
Yeah, it's something that it's this phenomenon where there's like an obsession with sort of overusing these things. You see it a lot specifically with gamers. That's like a really big deal, as if that world is their main world, to the point where they're spending, a lot of time, 8 hours a day, or even like 10 to 12 hours on the weekend, in that world. And I don't even know what the stats would be for young people on their phones, but I know when you take them away, it's a big deal.
Well, even some parents give their young boys and girls their own little mini leapfrog tablets,
right,
in the car,
right,
just to
right,
keep them busy.
Well, and they have the screens set up on new cars, that are like installed in the back, so that the kids can just sort of be, glued to it or inundated with something like that at a young age. So What? Let's go ahead and define like what basically causes tech addiction according to the secular world out there. Does anybody want to hit that up in our notes?
Yeah, there was a man named Dr. Lorenz who showed that the screen releases a dopamine in the brain that negatively affects our impulse control, and that this screen time specifically affects our frontal cortex, which is the same area in our brain that cocaine stimulates. And so this technology, if left without it, will kind of be equal to feeling that, I don't know what it's called, like when you
high.
Yeah, that sort of euphoria, right?
Right. And that's, so let's be clear. Like, dopamine is something that is normally released. Like, your brain does it when anything that's stimulating happens. So this isn't to say that technology is bad because it stimulates the brain. It's to say, hey, you should notice that there's a correlation here between what can make somebody addicted and technology. In other words, technology has the same opportunities to do that. However, it should also be noted that screen-based technology also has, through things like social media and so on and so forth, has built-in mechanisms that keep you coming back. Mm-hmm. And so in that vein, it's very much like a drug dealer, in a real sense of like always trying to keep you high, always trying to keep you coming back. There was a documentary on Netflix called The Social Dilemma, and they talk a little bit about that in the Social Dilemma. They talk about how they had like the engineers from Facebook, for instance. And you can ironically, you can look this up on Netflix and watch it. But they had like the engineer for the Facebook like button, for instance, and they talk about like the unforeseen negative effects of sort of giving you a hit off the drug of hitting the like button.
Right.
But what that does is it creates this sort of like feedback loop in a person where they constantly have to hit that up for more and more and more and more. And that encourages addiction, like in a neurological sense, that encourages addiction. And that's particularly interesting considering the age group that social media tends to see. I want to be careful in saying target, but it seems like the right word. Well, let's just say that there's a specific age group that uses social media frequently.
More frequently than other age groups.
Right. So maybe not Facebook, but, like TikTok and Instagram and Snapchat and all of these, hipper social media outlets, platforms. That's a very specific age group. And they're beginning to see things. Jake was just telling me about... what was it? Was it
Snapchat?
Snapchat. Mm-hmm. Was it Snapchat dysphoria?
Yeah, Snapchat dysphoria.
Yeah. Why don't you tell them about that?
So it's basically when somebody who is using Snapchat uses a filter to make them look a specific way, and then they go out of their way to get some sort of plastic surgery on their face so that they can make their own natural face look like that filter.
Look like a filter.
Yep.
Yeah. I just was reading an article about, I don't know, one of those Kardashians, but the article was actually about photography and copyright. But what was interesting about it was her, I'm sorry, I can't remember her name. I can't remember which one it is. It's not the Kanye West one.
It starts with a K.
Yeah, right. But her assistant accidentally sent out a photograph of her without it being airbrushed. And so she's like really trying to get it back. trying to put the toothpaste back in the bottle, and it's kind of a big deal, and like there's like a cease and desist or something of that nature, as people are reposting it, everybody is having to take it down, and there's this whole thing. But yeah, there's really, whoa, did we lose sound or something? All of a sudden we lost sound in the studio. Nope. Okay. But yeah, there's something to that. There's this control that is happening where people are really trying to control their image, to the point where people are now beginning to develop a type of body dysphoria about it.
It's pretty scary because not only do you go through withdrawals when you're without your phone, but then if you don't get the likes or the acceptance that you want, it's kind of like you're going through loss. And so on one end, you get this dependency on not a substance, but a device. And then on the other hand, you gain these feelings towards that device that amount to losing a loved one when you're without it.
Right. So when we're talking about that specifically, what we're seeing is that teenagers are very specifically vulnerable to the effect of that. Sorry, we're getting like all of a sudden we can't hear ourselves in the studio. But hey, if you can hear us at home, I guess it's okay. Producer Jasmine says we're fine out there. So, okay. Anyway, so teenagers in specific are becoming are really vulnerable targets to that. And that's kind of a really difficult thing that it seems like a lot of teenagers are dealing with. And that's why we really wanted to talk about it, because there's definite effects on how technology is. There's definite effects on the culture for how technology is affecting people, and this is beyond even the confines of the secular world, but goes into the church too, and how our young people are using technology. So. Yeah, and we're seeing that. We're seeing those type of dysphoric thought processes even amongst young people in the church. Maybe it takes on a different form where somebody's like, I don't know, posts like a uber Christian comment and wants likes. But the same thing is true. It doesn't matter what your belief is. This is a mechanism issue. So in any case, yeah, the reason why we're so susceptible to that is because technology kind of hits, well, the screens anyway, kind of hit like a lot of areas for how humans need to interact. So like humans need stimulation, they need interaction, they need changes in environment, and all of those things help humans to function better. Well, when you have it with such accessibility and with such efficiency, where you can literally turn on a device and talk to somebody immediately, or turn on a device and see what's going on with somebody, across the world, or, watch the TV and see the news, like things that we kind of take for granted, it is easy to replace the real world, meaning the world that we, that is physically available to us without help, we'll put it that way, for what's happening in a screen or in a box. And I'm reminded of conversations with Sophia, who's now 8, but I remember having conversations with her when it became apparent to me that she didn't understand whether something was happening live or whether it was something that was recorded. Because, when I was a kid, we didn't have such a thing as live, let alone, there was live TV, but we didn't have like live person-to-person devices, let alone a screen on our phones, let alone phones that weren't attached to walls. And I'm only 40. So I remember having to explain to her that just because you see something on the screen doesn't mean that it's real, but that is a real person, and that is really happening right now. And that's a really complex concept.
It's scary.
So there's a lot of discernment that needs to take place in terms of technology. A lot of hoops that people need to jump through. But it's undeniable how it affects our lives through efficiency. And with teenagers specifically, when they experience stress, it's like it makes sense that it is the go-to, because they can jump to, like, if you break up with somebody, like it's easy for you then to, post a post of some sort and then make up for how bad you're feeling with little shots of dopamine from the likes that you put down.
Right.
So I don't know if either of you guys want. Justine's been real quiet over here. I don't know if you guys want to talk about that at all. Like, what's your experience with getting the dopamine hits?
Personally, when I post on social media, I usually use Instagram, and so a lot of the times I'll post my art on there. I always do. I do like when people react to it, but it also isn't really the biggest priority for me, so I don't really post all the time. And there's even some times where I don't post my art, but yeah, it feels good for sure to be encouraged in that way.
Do you use social media?
Not really. I'm like, I don't know, I guess a little bit older. Like, I kind of missed that generation
right
a little bit, like just by a hair, I'd say. And so I only have Facebook, and I don't really post on there. I actually like have anxiety about posting on there. Like, I don't like to.
Right.
So I'm kind of the other side of it. I used to have Instagram, but then someone somehow posted on my Instagram, and so
you got hacked.
Yeah, I just deleted it. I was like, okay, well, that's annoying. So then I just deleted my Instagram. But I mean, as far as like teenagers in my life or young kids in my life that I've like seen grow up in this technology boom, like for me, the first thing was MySpace, and then it went to and then it went to Facebook, and then all of a sudden it was just like boom, there's like so many different ways. And I feel like
like that coupled with the iPhone, I think just blew it up.
And it was like hard for me to keep track of it or understand like why there's so many. And then just just seeing teenagers that are in my life or like younger people, and it seems like all those things, because I have like looked at those apps and like experienced them, but just everything is getting faster,
right?
And there's more ways to like to have likes or to have people following you, or I think Snapchat is the one that has like the streaks. Like if you message a friend every day, then you get points for that. And the teenagers or older people, whoever it is, they don't want to lose their streak with that person. So that can be really addicting.
So
it's just been crazy for me to see the transformation so quickly. And so I guess for me, it's like trying not to be afraid of it in a sense, because that also can be not the best way to deal with it.
Right.
And then also keeping up with it so that I do know how to relate to the kids that I'm like influencing and like being around, so I know how to like, so I know what's going on.
Right.
And know how to help them or talk about it.
I know every time I turn around, there's some sort of new thing that is like nuanced in nature. Like I remember when it was like, you had your websites, and then all of a sudden they had blogs, and then all of a sudden they had Tumblr. Mm-hmm. And at the same time they had Tumblr, they had Twitter, which was just a bigger Tumblr. Mm-hmm. No, a smaller Tumblr. And then Twitter went up in characters, and then Tumblr became not a thing. It kind of went the way of MySpace. And then they started doing like Instagram, which is just a toned down Facebook. And MySpace was just essentially like
A website almost.
well, it was a toned down or it was a toned up Facebook. Like you could do so much more
Yeah.
with MySpace than you
Yeah,
could with
MySpace was
Facebook.
awesome.
And I just every time I turn around, there's something that it's like, well, this you can do videos for a minute here, but here you can do videos for only 10 seconds. I'm just like,
And then they disappear.
why don't you just do them only for 10 seconds then? I don't know. I guess I'm
We're
too
really
old.
aging ourselves
Yeah,
here.
I guess I'm too old, so I have to have these things explained to me sometimes. But the point is that people use technology for all sorts of different reasons, and because of its efficiency, it makes it like desirable. You know, it makes it accessible in that vein, and they use it for everything from boredom to being able to connect socially with people.
Even their careers.
Yep, exactly. And then, an escape from reality. And we can't really escape technology in this day and age. You kind of reasonably need it. Which is where the real dilemma comes in, because it is because of how it is and how accessible it is, and the dopamine hits that come from it, which is measurable, and we've been able to see that that's the case, which is why even the secular world has these constraints on it. Like, they don't want you to let a child 6 months or younger be able to look at a screen, and that it should only be for interactive play when it's 6 months to 2 years old. Yet all of us, I think, have seen those parents who, when their child won't be quiet, they just put their child in front of a screen. And so, yeah, what are we doing when we're doing that is we're teaching these children to, basically be addicted.
Escape.
Yeah,
the
it's
reality.
okay to put a worldly substance in front of them to escape things that are hard.
Right. So that's what's gonna happen, and I think we're gonna see a lot more of the consequences of that mentality for dealing with technology in such a flippant way and not realizing it. It's very much like a drug that is being abused, and people saying, well, it's okay, it makes life better. It's a prescription to make life better. And it's like, okay, but it actually has problems, and we're going to see a lot more disorders in regard to attention and so on and so forth. And they've already started to find the effects of these things. Like I mentioned earlier, there's that Social Dilemma movie where they talked about the like button and what it does. There's the Snapchat dysphoria, like we talked about. There is, what is it, the sociometer?
Yeah.
Where is that? You want to talk about that?
So basically, that is a theory that describes how how your brain, I guess, it thinks of how your acceptance is, your clout. So
Right.
You would post something, and then if you don't get a lot of likes, then you're going to change your character so that you gain more likes.
Yeah.
And you're going to be somebody you're not, or have a belief that you don't normally have, or try to change your way of thinking, not on a productive way, but in a way that pleases the world, the culture.
Yeah.
So kind of like catfish.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I could see that. Like how, there's a malice to catfish. We're talking about the Catfish TV show / movie, the really bizarre premise, but it's a real thing.
Yeah.
Where people hide behind their social media profiles, and they just a lot of times you'll find that these stories start with wanting to be liked, but then they turn into really bizarre stories, oftentimes gender swapping and just being really malicious. If you ever want to take a trip down something really bizarre, check it out. It's on MTV. But yeah, so kind of like that. Where were we?
We were talking about the social meter.
Right.
So this is like a way that you can gain your self-esteem, and it's basically a gauge telling you how you're doing in the social media world.
So it creates this attention-based economy, and that really alters the definition of secular truth. It really alters like our relationship with the truth, because it really is no longer like tried and true and defined by hard, unchangeable facts that are like hard won and hard gotten. Mm-hmm. It's just quick. If we like it, then it's good. If we don't like it, then it's bad. And if we hate it, then it's really bad. Then it gets canceled.
Right. And then on top of that, once you put in the addition of the social dilemma on what we see from that, where you're going to get these random ads or whatever to cater to what you're saying or putting out there, that will even more give you this information that will fade to black the truth. And it's just something that's going to please you with your eyes, even if it's a lie.
Yeah. So we spent the last 30 minutes sort of defining the problem. It's a big problem. It's a pervasive problem. It's giant in its scope, and it's inescapable in its reach. And so we're gonna go to a testimonial real quick here. One of our pastors, Pastor James, he was vulnerable enough to share his own struggle with tech addiction. So I don't know, do we have that available?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this was posted, one of our little interns got the testimonial from him. So you can ask him more about it if you know who he is. But basically this says that he used to stay up playing video games before tech addiction was actually a thing. He would stay up till 6 a.m. and go to sleep for half an hour to an hour and a half, and then go work for 8 hours. And then he also had an issue with TV. Like there's a TV on in the room. He would just get glued to it and have to pay attention to what was on the television. And so it took him a long time to not just instantly get glued and to be able to focus on other things. And how he was able to get better, I guess, is the way that it's worded on here, was he stopped giving the video games or the tech or TV the control, and he put those things in like proper perspective, and he stopped letting them basically control his life, and he put them through the filter of God, and use them more as like tools than, I know what I would say is like crutches or something that he was addicted to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So James, if you're listening at some point, you will, thanks for sharing that and for being vulnerable. The reason why he said that, we could share his name or, be anonymous, whatever. But the reason why I wanted to share that is just, to let people know, like this is something that is pervasive regardless of even generation. What James is talking about, he says, before tech addiction was a thing. That's not to say that it wasn't a problem that people suffered from. It's just before it was defined as tech addiction. And, and James is like very old. So I'm just kidding. He's not that old. He's not that old. But, it was before that. And what we're seeing is that there are people who are like straight up geriatric all the way to, you know, very like young children who are exhibiting this. This is like beyond generation, beyond the generation you grew up in and beyond the age you're at problem. This is like the accessibility is just, it's such a big thing. You know, adults put it into the hands of children, older people who in a very real sense, like my father, for instance, he's in his 60s. You can see him featured on Truth Time with Pastor Monty. But, you know, when he grew up, there was one television in a black and white, or a black and white television in one room in your house. And now there's like multiple televisions in every house. And, you know, and we have our phones and stuff. So the point I'm making is, but you have people his age who literally just sit on their screens. Like that's all they do. They sit on their screens. They pay attention to the news. They play Candy Crush or whatever game it is they play now. I don't know. I don't play games like that. My mom says she's a gamer because she plays games like that, but those aren't games in my mind.
Solitaire?
Right. Solitaire, whatever.
Great game.
Not Scrabble.
Words Up?
Yeah, some
Words with
words.
Friends.
Yeah, something like that.
I
In
play
any
games.
case, it's not that those games are the problem. I'm just saying, like, there are people who that's literally all they do for hours and hours and hours and hours. They take little breaks here and there, but that's like basically their life. And maybe you're watching this, and maybe that's a little bit convicting. And you know, I guess what I want to say to that is, A, if it is convicting, then maybe there's some truth to it, and it's a problem. And B, like, you're not alone. It's something that it's going to be more and more struggled with, and is a struggle, and, you know, is a struggle even for one of our pastors. It's something that he had to come to reckon with. And I think that it's a continual thing. The difficulty then lies in all of these things. What are we going to do with it? So there's a few questions that we have. The big one that always comes to the forefront is, you know, is it a sin? And I think that the easy answer to that is yeah. It's tech addiction is a sin. One of the things I want to impress upon you is it's not any more a sin than any other thing, in the sense that it's a deviation from what God plans. Like, God doesn't want He doesn't want us to go about our days mindlessly, or to be stuck in a virtual world that He didn't create. You know, He wants us to put our minds on serving Him, on doing things that matter, like true ministry, which is like ministering to people who are not able to take care of themselves, to the dejects of society, the dejected of society. And you can't do that if you're too busy trying to find the right word on Words with Friends or whatever, you know, trying to match the right diamond on Candy Crush. Is that a thing? Do they do that on Candy Crush?
Diamonds?
Diamonds are bejeweled.
Oh, Bejeweled, man. I'm really dating myself. You can't do that on, if you're trying to figure out how to smoke the next, 13-year-old on all right, producer
Call
Jasmine.
of Duty?
Yeah, Call of Duty. Yeah.
I don't play it. I've just heard about it.
Yeah. So that's going to be Fortnite. Yeah, Fortnite.
Oh, there you are.
So that's like, you have to live in the real world. And so, yeah, I think it is a sin on many levels. One is not being a good steward of what you have, which is, this physical world that God gave you. Two is not following through with what we call the cultural mandate, which we find in Genesis, where it says, go out and be fruitful and multiply, right? That's not about having sex, although I do think that there is a correlation between people who are tech addicted and people who maybe, aren't multiplying. So that, anyway.
Sure.
And then the last one, which I think is probably the most important one, is it's a worship issue. Right? When when we
yeah,
talk about
totally.
addiction, that is the basis of addiction, is the replacement of God for something else in your life.
Yeah, I think I was just thinking about how when you're playing The Sims, you're literally acting as God, like controlling what these people are doing. But then in like a creative video game, sort of like Minecraft or something like that, or even just a game where you build your character. I play Diablo. And so that's kind of the essence of it.
Which I just want to take a moment to gripe about, because people talk about how, hold your thought, okay? Like, keep holding on to it. People talk about how Diablo is satanic because Diablo is like literally like Latin for Satan. But what they don't take into account is, yes, the content is dealing with Satan, but your job is to stop Satan in Diablo. Anyway.
Yes. So shout out to Diablo.
It bugs me.
But so in those games, you are building up yourself in such a way where you're not thinking about your ministry with God. That's idolatry. You're putting that game in the place of God to build up this universe. It could be idolatry, but it also could be a very, very tough sin to reconcile. If you're going to build that complex, it's denying God ultimately.
Yeah, it is when you use it to not do what he wants you to do.
Yeah.
If you can take the narrative of something and use it to glorify God, then I think that that's actually a very freeing narrative. I don't think that we have to be legalistic in it. I don't think there's any problem with playing a game like Diablo if you don't lose the fact that you are a Christian in that process, who is ultimately a disciple of Christ, and, following through with loving people correctly, loving people tenderheartedly and loving God wholeheartedly is more important than the next piece of armor that you get in that game. And living as if you are following Christ is important in the game. So making choices that making choices toward the good, because a lot of these games, they give you the choice literally to like change your morality.
That's Fable.
Yeah, Fable. In Fable, you actually grow like devil horns and have certain powers if you act in a negative way.
Right.
And then you grow like angelic, like a halo and wings and stuff if you act in a positive way.
That just sounds crazy.
It is crazy. Those games are really good storytelling. But if you live in those games, that begins to be a problem. And
as a Christian, if you're doing that.
And we have people who have developed whole virtual worlds to that end. And we're beginning to move in that direction even more. If we talk about the non-fungible tokens, the NFTs that are like becoming a thing. Do you guys know what those are?
No idea.
It's like digital art that you can track. It's like every move. It's becoming a thing where people are like making digital art that the long and short of it is exactly where it came from and what hands it's gone through because of the way they make it. So like if you make a copy of it, it tells you what computer it was on before.
I've heard of that.
And it's this whole thing where people are doing that, and they're people are selling real estate, like digital real estate, in like fake world, and people are like buying up digital real estate to live and to put in artwork in these like fake worlds.
Okay, we're just talking over my head now. I don't know.
Well, even like things like Cash App or some of the new technologies that have opened up things like day trading, for instance, where people are just checking their stocks all the time. There's a lot of reasons to be on your devices and to feel like that is interacting with the real world. And if you are doing that to the point where you are not connecting with God's creation and you are not connecting with God, if it's more important to you to watch a football game, which, by the way, broadcasts on a screen, right? To watch a football game than to be in church. Or how about this? I'll give you a moral conundrum, like an even bigger moral conundrum. It is better for you to watch a church service online so that you don't have to connect to the people at the church. Mm-hmm. That is a problem. And there is sin behind it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, and I think we have to call that what it is, which is a worship problem. It's not wanting to worship God as he wants to be worshiped, but instead trying to make him on your own terms. And that is going to be the case with any addiction, you know? I think food came to mind when you were reading about it being a tool, I think. There's something about it being a tool, using it correctly. Food comes to mind in regard to that, and how easy it is for people to turn food into an idol. And what's really like crazy about that is the effect, the physical effect that it has on a person to like alter them when they turn it into an idol. But it's the same way with video games and movies and TV and so on and so forth. You know, these things are tools. We shouldn't have to avoid them. However, when we talk about how to break free, I think sometimes we need to avoid them. I think Jesus is very clear that if a person is going to go to hell, if a person is going to lose their soul in the process of their sin, then they need to cut off their hand.
Yeah.
So I want to be clear. He's not saying cut off your hand, but he's making the point, like, better to cut your hand off than your whole body off from God. And so sometimes what we need to do is do something radical. And sometimes that means detoxifying our life and cleansing it and getting rid of screens. Maybe that means you have to go out to the wilderness and, you know, go live in a cabin. Maybe it means that you need to have like a no screen time in your house policy, or no screen time after this policy, or that you simplify your gadgets and go to like a flip phone, you know, something
Straight
like
up,
that.
buy a Nokia and get a job at a farm.
Yeah. Yes. The point is, sometimes if you want to free yourself from those things, you need to make radical changes. And certainly we've seen that there is somewhat of a push, you know, where people want to get off the grid, as they say, to get away from those things. But yeah, sometimes you need to make radical changes. So, is it a sin to use those things? No, it's a sin to be addicted to those things.
Right.
So let's be clear about that. It is a sin to be addicted to those things. It's not a sin to use them. And if you are addicted to those things, first off, you need to understand that it might take a radical change. And you have to not be afraid of that. I don't know if you guys want to speak to that more, or...
Yeah, I just want to clarify, like you already did, but basically a telling sign is what you're failing to do while you're using those things.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's when it becomes a sin. And there's an example where this person who is addicted to video games is now having to reconcile between that and his marriage. And the reason why is because he spends so much time playing video games that his wife feels like she has to compete for the husband's attention.
Where'd you pull this example from?
That was from the... just a second.
It's from that little booklet, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, there's a book you were saying. Yeah, he's saying that there's this book that we were reading that has that example in it. But I can tell you, like, from my actual marriage counseling that I've done, I've come across circumstances where that is a real source of contention, like an actual source of contention, where I'm having to help people navigate the minefield of something as seemingly innocuous and benign as a video game. It seems like it's not a big deal. Well, that's because you're looking at the tool. You're not looking at the use of the tool. it's the same thing as a hammer. Like a hammer doesn't seem like a big deal until it's being waved by a lunatic.
Right.
So you got to be careful,
I'll point out, you don't give a baby a hammer.
Also by
You know what I'm saying?
also until it's also or either a lunatic or an amateur.
Yeah. That's why we don't give our kids our phones.
Right. But yeah, so how do you break free of it? Well, first of all, you need to realize that it might require a radical change. Secondly, I would say that it is like anything. From a biblical standpoint, from a biblical counseling standpoint, you need to recognize that you have a problem. You need to confess that problem, and then you need to let God into that problem. I think a lot of people who have this issue with technology in specific, don't realize they have a problem, and I think we see that a lot. They don't realize, because it's just so pervasive in their world. It's like, how could this, be a real thing?
Right.
I'm so tired. Like in Pastor James's testimony, I think if you did the math there, he got basically an hour of sleep.
Yeah, an hour to an hour and a half.
Right. And so he comes home and he's like just beat up, and it's like, oh, I feel so tired because now I'm putting words into his mouth, but I can imagine the circumstance of, I feel so tired. I had, a hard day at work. I didn't like what I was doing. I was irritable, blah, blah, blah. Well, maybe if you slept more than an hour, it's that sort of thing. My wife is always getting on my case because I like to watch TV at night, and we as a unit have made sure to not let our kids watch TV right before we go to bed because of what is it called? I can't remember the actual.
Something about blue screen.
Yeah, it's blue screen does something to your brain. I can't remember what it is, but it makes you stay up later.
Please forgive us for not knowing more information.
Yes.
LED lights.
No, it's not LEDs.
Okay.
It's late. I can't recall these things so quickly. And it isn't in my notes. But it's in my head. In case you're watching, Michela, it's in my head. So in any case, but there is truth to that these things do affect you, and those things have to be taken into account when you're dealing with these things. So
yeah, end up staying up later when you're using that blue light.
Yeah, and so there are giant radical changes that need to be done. But the smaller one, believe it or not, is maybe just realizing that you have a problem and then allowing God into it and confessing that and saying, this might be bigger than me, and I need you to help me with it. It's becoming a worship issue. Like, I'm thinking about, I cannot tell you how many times I have come across in prayer, a group, like while we're praying as a group, for various reasons, I have to have my eyes open at various times. Although I just want to say the Bible never tells us that we have to have our eyes closed when we pray. But I have, come across people using their cell phones while we're praying. That is like disjointed, right? Like there's something wrong with that.
Yeah.
So that I would say that is a point where a person needs to confess, yeah, my mind wasn't on God during this time, and they need to repent of it and ask for God to take that from them, and that might require something radical. There are also things that we can do to sort of band-aid those things, like we talk about, like blue screen, like you can get like apps, for instance, that will change like the light on your screen. Like, you can be conscientious as a user of technology. So like pretty much on all the devices, they've got some sort of like screen time thing for kids, where especially if you let your kid God forbid, and I mean that seriously, you let your kid like have free access to a device, you can set it so that they only have so much time. And that's positive. Like that you can be a conscientious user and set other people up for success with being a conscientious user. So there are things that you can do toward that end. Next week we're going to be talking about pornography, and just like that, there's pornography definitely falls into the line of this category where people become addicted to what they're easily able to access on their screen. And there's apps that you can use to combat that, that will help you with combating that. So there's ways that you can sort of be conscientious and help yourself out to use your tools in the correct way. But when it comes down to it, it is really an issue of confessing that you have that issue and then repenting of that. Meaning, again, I know repent is like this trigger word for people. It's like, oh my gosh, you used that word. It's ancient and archaic. But it just means to turn, the other direction. So yeah, that's what I would say about that. And that's basically what the Bible says. And, be keeping it in mind that if this is an issue that you have, like, take it seriously, because it has real world effects. Like, that's really what it comes down to. Like, oh, technology is no big deal. Well, that's not true. It has real world effects. They're demonstrable. The secular world views it as an epidemic, and it's something that we need to take seriously. Mm-hmm. So one of the questions that we got is, how do I avoid tech addiction when there's a screen everywhere I look? That's a great question. And for me, it's a question that I ask, because I have I have kids, you know what I mean? And I think the answer to that is that you can't stop your child from looking at something. But what you can do is you can teach them how to look at something. And so I think that applies to technology as much as it applies to media, like what we consume. It applies to what we eat, what we allow into our bodies. Like, I can't teach them not to, I can't control their behavior, but I can give them a filter by which to understand it. Yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think about that? That's a real issue.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Like right now in this room, you can't see it. You can't see it because we're in studio, right? You can see this screen behind us, but there's literally 1, 2, 3, 4, the screen behind us. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, there's screens everywhere in this room alone, just to accomplish what we're accomplishing, with you, who is literally watching this on a screen. So it is unavoidable that the temptation is there because of the ease of it. What do you guys think?
I would argue that probably everyone has some sort of tech addiction.
Yeah.
Interesting.
My mind just
or
goes
anxiety. It's like, if you think about a phone, like how much you have on that phone, if you took like all the apps out and all the different things out, you would just be overloaded. Like, you'd have a calculator, you'd have an alarm, you'd have your calendar. Like,
Totally.
It's just, you'd have all your friends. Like, if you just took everything out of that one device and carried it around, like, you wouldn't be able to move.
Yeah.
It is overwhelming, and it is a lot to think about, to have next to you, like, 24/7. I mean, I know people that just sleep with their phone, like, right there.
Yep. Mm-hmm. What were you going to say, Jake?
Just from that point that you made, Josh, I know that in the past when I've watched some podcasts, I would have other apps running too, like Facebook and stuff like that, where you would get these notifications. And while the podcast is going, I would check what the notification is and then continue watching the podcast. And I'm like wondering how, just in this one episode, how many people got distracted on
Sure.
other things that would deter them from focusing in on this exact topic.
Sure. Yeah, I think like I even have moments like that, you know, where it's like I'm tired and you're in the middle of the sermon, you know, and you're thinking to yourself, oh, I got to do this other thing. And I'm being a good steward if I'm just, you know, efficient with it, while my fellow pastor is, you know, preaching on stage and like trying to share the word of God with me and everybody else. It's okay because I'm a pastor too, and you know, and I need to be efficient. So I'm just gonna pull up, you know, something quick on my phone and, you know, just check it out. But really, what I'm doing is I'm taking myself out of that moment. I'm not being present in that moment. I'm not doing right by God, and I'm not doing right by well, like James, for instance, if he's preaching, which I think he preaches tomorrow or on Sunday. Yeah, on Sunday. Shameless plug. He's going to be preaching about music, about like music as an input and discernment with what we have there. What I'm saying is, it's when you say like everybody has this, we're going to call it a temptation to step outside the moment. I think that that's true. And so I think that this is what, if you want to help somebody, don't sensationalize the fact of it. I think that sensationalizing it and being like, you have a tech addiction and it's a problem, not to be cliche, but it's like, you know, what is it? Your 3 fingers pointing back at you or whatever, you know? Yeah, I mean, I think you should realize that we all face the same temptation because this is so prevalent, because technology is so prevalent. I think that what we need to do is we need to give the right filters, and we need to teach people to look at technology with the correct filter. So it's useful insofar as it doesn't take us away from God. It's useful insofar as it doesn't encourage us to sin or encourage us to detach from other human beings, and so on and so forth. If we have the right mentality about technology, then I don't think that we'll have to worry anymore so much about having screens. And then it's about, you know, doing right by, I guess, the science of it. Not creating systems, you know, where we're like literally doping ourselves up with likes and so on and so forth. And you see it all the time, the toxic culture. You're hearing all the time that this celebrity like deleted their account or whatever, right? Because the culture was too toxic or whatever. I can tell you, like from my standpoint, like I have a couple different social media accounts because I have various things that I do. Like I have a band with producer Jasmine, and I don't even monitor that feed because I want to make sure that what I make in my music is because I want to make music and not because I want like a dopamine shot. So I have a specific filter by which I look at things. So yeah, but when it comes down to it, it has to be that you have the correct filter. But if you can't just alter the way that you look at things, and that's going to include confessing that this is a real issue that you're struggling with. Maybe you're living victoriously with it, but you're still struggling with it. And that we all struggle with it because of its accessibility. And you can't just change your behavior in it, like turn around from that behavior and start using your technology differently by using a God-based filter where you're thinking about God first. You know, that you're checking your Bible app instead of checking your Instagram when you know, the first thing in the morning, like people do. If you can't put God first in those things, then I think the scripture calls for a radical change. And that's just that. It calls for a radical change where you have to be bold enough and brave enough to say, because I recognize this is a problem, I'm going to do something about it, because it has a real It has a real effect on my relationship with God. It has a real effect on my relationship with other people. And it's actually having a quantifiable effect on my life. So it needs to be treated seriously. We should probably wrap up. Where are you guys? Anything else you want to say?
No, feel good about it.
Yeah, I can't really think of anything.
Okay.
Can't think at all.
All right.
Stop me before I go on another tangent.
Right. Okay. Well, we have one more show for this set of shows. It's going to be next week. Next week at 9:30, we're going to be talking about kind of a rather big topic. Again, I feel like we're kind of just ramping in these topics. Last week we talked about social anxiety kind of in general, and now we're talking about tech addiction, and next week we're going to be talking about pornography, which is a big topic. It's kind of a no-no topic. I don't know. Like last week I said that Justine was cooking a baby. It's kind of a topic that churches don't seem to want to talk about.
Very true. Just sex in general.
Sex in general, but specifically I feel like pornography is like this topic where people like, it's a dirty little secret. Mm-hmm. And so it's a big topic. And we're going to tackle it next week as good as we can in an hour. I'm sorry guys. Like we're dealing with like really big topics and I feel like we're just scratching the surface of them. So if you guys have questions, comments, please be kind to us first off. And then secondly, let's talk about them. Just because the show is done for tonight doesn't mean that we can't have that conversation. And that leads me to, closing up. If you want to reach out because of what you've heard here tonight, you can email, you can text us. Our staff is always available to pray, to talk, or to answer questions. And we actually do that outside the show each Monday night from 9 to 10:30. From 9 to 10:30 Monday nights, we are available to talk, to pray, or to answer questions, as best we can. So those are our office hours. So feel free to reach out. Remember, if you want to donate to us, that's available too. You can find out more about that at abfpdx.org. And just, if this is a topic of conversation you want to broach, please feel free to share this video with anybody who you feel like might need it. And then if you're somebody who's like thinking about it, you're watching this video and you're like, yeah, this is me. Or this might be me. I would just encourage you to pray about it, to seek out fellow believers or a pastor. And remember, you're not the only person who has this issue, who has these temptations. So remember to, and you can do that with us too, for the record. If you're having that, we may not know you, but you can call us. So yeah, the number of course is on your screen. It's 971-208-5290. So you can call us and we'll talk to you. So yeah, do that on Monday nights. Please share the video and remember to subscribe and to hit the notification bell so that you can be updated to when the next video is that we're going to talk about. Remember that the next episode that we are going to talk about is on pornography, and that is a pervasive issue that nobody really wants to talk about, it seems like. And so there's probably somebody in your life that you can let know that we're going to be talking about these things. Mm-hmm. Also, be aware that we have other shows that we are doing on the VRN. We have Truth Time with Pastor Monty. It airs every Tuesday. There was a new Heart Scribe Bible study that I just did that was dropped just a couple days ago, I think on Saturday. And this Saturday, we're doing Culture Insanity. Pastor Monty and Pastor Adam will be talking with a pastor from outside of our church. And they'll be talking about pop culture, and there's a lot to talk about always. So, all that said, good night. Stay healthy, stay vigilant, and cue the disclaimer.
The views presented in this program are not meant to express the specific views of Aletheia Bible Fellowship.